But this is from this article over here at Phoenix. It says, in those days, Miyamoto would come to us at 11 p.m. after he finished all his board member work and say, it's Mario time. At that point, we'd start a planning meeting that would run until 2 a.m. At that point, Miyamoto would go home, leaving us with the words, you should return home soon for your health. Over the next 2 or 3 hours, we'd write the game, design documents, and summarize the instructions for our artists and programmers. It was the craziest crunch time that I've ever experienced in my development career. But if the god of games was working so much, could we give up? Could we give up? Miyamoto had incredible stamina.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy Andy Matrix. I am back on Angry Guys YouTube channel, and we are back talking about Nintendo because, yeah, 2025 is the year of the Nintendo disasters, and it keeps on going. But this time, it's a little different. So, there has been a conversation about work life at Nintendo, and like always, there seems to be a big misunderstanding because many Americans don't know what the work life in Japan is like. Okay, so there has been discussions about Nintendo employees being overworked, and as someone who has been studying Japanese culture since high school, by the way, and I have visited Japan, I have a lot to say about this. Okay, now guys, if you haven't heard of me, my name is Andy Matrix. Check out my YouTube channel, Andy Matrix Gaming. I talk about anime, gaming content, Japanese culture. If you're into any of those things, make sure to follow me. Click the link in the description. I'm trying to reach 3,000 subscribers, guys. So if you would, thank you very much. And also, don't forget to follow Angry Guy on Rumble because YouTube is now the censor station. Okay, so go ahead and follow Angry Guy on Rumble. He's uploading new content over there. So go ahead and check him out. Click the link in the description to follow Angry Guy on Rumble. And finally, do not let Klaus Schwab and the elites tell you that you'll own nothing and be happy. Make sure to check out Angry Guy's Crypto Academy. With cryptocurrency, we'll be able to, have some control of our money in the future. And Angry Guy's going to teach you how to buy and sell crypto, day trade crypto, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, let's get on with the show. So, out of all the wonderful things about Japan that foreigners love, the biggest turnoff about Japan, about living in Japan, is the work culture. Yeah, this is pretty sad. The work culture in Japan is sad. I mean, everything about Japan is usually absolutely wonderful. The like the anime, the food, the way Tokyo's built. Tokyo is built very professionally. It's a train country. You don't need a car to live in Japan, unlike America. There's so many great things about Japan, right? The people are great. The Japanese women are awesome. Why, of course. But the one depressing thing that many people complain about Japan, and Americans that live in Japan, is the work culture. Is absolutely insane. There are Japanese people that they self-delete at work, or let's just say they pass away at work, and people don't notice until the next day. And I'm not joking about this. This is sad, man. This is sad. And this is common. And, being overworked is actually common in the anime world, where Japanese animators work harder and longer than, harder and longer than a Mexican in America working for minimum wage. And that was actually a joke. That was a joke. Please, don't take it seriously. But anyways, I would not be surprised if Nintendo's the same way. Nintendo's probably the same way over there in Japan. Just overworking their people. Just throwing all these hours at them. And I remember when I was in high school, my art teacher. By the way, my art teacher in high school, he was married to a Japanese woman, so he knew a lot about Japanese culture. This was back in the 2000s, man. My art teacher was absolutely amazing. So he told me stories about Japanese companies that would have game developers sleep in the office, and they were not allowed to go home until the game was finished. This was total job slavery, I tell you. Total job slavery. And again, this is my art teacher in high school telling me these stories. This was back in the 2000s. I believe it. I believe it because again, similarly to the world of Japanese animation where they overwork you, you work harder than a freaking horse. You work harder than a horse pulling a carriage back in the old days. And yeah, and Nintendo's probably right around there. I've heard stories about Nintendo. Again, people say that Nintendo is a gaming company, but they're also a law firm. I believe this. I believe this, man. And I mean, take a look at some of the things that Nintendo has done over the past years, and throwing certain people in jail. That's how far they're willing to go. I wonder how they treat their employees. But anyways, to go deeper into the story, I got side scrollers. They're actually, pretty popular on YouTube, side scrollers. So I'm gonna go ahead and let them take it from here.
One of the big conversations that has kind of popped up out of nowhere over on X has been the conversation about crunch. We've seen this conversation. It's been an ongoing thing over the last decade or so. And crunch pretty much means you're working a lot of extra hours to complete the goal of finishing the game. And oftentimes what happens is they say, hey, the game's going to be released in March. And then all of a sudden February rolls around. They go, oh, the game's half the way done. So we got to bust our ass to get it to the finish line before it's finished up in March or whatever it is, right? And that's what you see, this crunched idea. And then Nintendo has always kind of been immune to this idea mostly because Japanese culture is so much different than American culture. But this has been one of those conversations. If you can pull up my screen over here, Phoenix, says buying a Switch 2 and buying, and there's a larger conversation here, which I want to get into, but this is where it all started. It says buying a Switch 2 and buying Switch 2 games are not supporting anti-consumer. They're not equal in supporting anti-consumer practices. It's driving me insane. You say you don't want to spend money on it on one yet. That's fine. You don't have to put yourself on some weird pedestal to do it, right? Okay, that's fine. That's where this whole thing started, and then it went here. It says, but they make video games $80, right? It says Nintendo is one of the only companies, is one of the only video game companies you don't hear horror stories about the work environment from. You consistently see articles about how their staff receives annual pay raises. They don't crunch. They don't have mass layoffs. And then this journalist from Kotaku came in and said Nintendo's crunch culture was literally called Mario time. Now this is a million views over here, right? Now, look, maybe I have a misunderstanding of what crunch is. And let me get to my understanding of this first, then we'll get into this. But my understanding of crunch is a lot of hours in a successive days, more or less keeping you away from living a normal life, right? Where you have deadlines. Deadlines have to be met. Everybody works together to finish those deadlines by a certain amount of time, right? That's my understanding of what you see with video game developers, specifically in the West in the United States, right? Obviously, Japan culture is traditionally very different. There's different labor laws. There's different all sorts of everything. The culture is so different. It's ridiculous. It's an entirely different world. But this is from this article over here at Phoenix. It says, in those days, Miyamoto would come to us at 11 p.m. after he finished all his board member work and say, it's Mario time. At that point, we'd start a planning meeting that would run until 2 a.m. At that point, Miyamoto would go home, leaving us with the words, you should return home soon for your health. Over the next 2 or 3 hours, we'd write the game design documents and summarize the instructions for our artists and programmers. It was the craziest crunch time that I've ever experienced in my development career. But if the god of games was working so much, could we give up? Could we give up? Miyamoto had incredible stamina here. So they're obviously talking about, they may be talking about right now, who knows? But specifically with Shigeru Miyamoto working till 11 p.m., having these meetings. And then this has obviously put a spotlight on this. He says, moral of the story is not Nintendo bad or Mario time was worth it or Mario Kart shouldn't be $80. Just that reality is more complicated than a fandom that reduces multinational companies to team sports, right? This got me thinking while reading this. First and foremost, the crunch conversation is an interesting one. I think everybody has their own. They can make their own decisions on how they want to live their lives, right? But one thing that was said in that, which I think is once again goes to Japanese culture, is you have a leader who is doing business stuff all day, and then he stops down and he continues working, and they're saying he's working this, he has this ridiculous bit energy, and ultimately people want to follow that energy. They want to follow the leader of what's happening, the guy who created Mario, guy who created these games. So he's leading by example in a lot of these situations. And don't forget in that he also encouraged them to go home, right? He didn't say you need to stay to get this done. He encouraged them to go home. So I kind of feel like there's mixed messages in kind of this reporter saying this, but just your general thoughts on crunch culture. I think everybody does it in every industry ever. It's just called different things. Sometimes it's called overtime. Sometimes it's called crunch. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Let's start with you, Mama Akko.
Well, I know for me, when I used to work as an Amazon driver back in Houston, we did quite a lot of overtime during Prime Week, and it's just like I'm used to occasionally having to pick up more. I know that with game developers, they're not salaried; they all make hourly. Correct? I'm not quite sure. Does it
Not
depend?
necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. I would say that
Okay.
there's a lot that certainly are salaried, and they're salaried. They make a ton of money.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All I would say is just I understand like when you have deadlines like that and you promise deadlines like that. Yeah, it really sucks when you have to come to the employee and say, "Hey, we need this done now." And I've seen quite a lot of horror stories of seeing that from game developers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've seen it not just with game developers, but with animation studios and with movie studios as well. Like it's all over the place. I think it depends on the culture at the company. Like if your boss is willing to stay late with you and willing to do stuff with you, then I think it depends. It really does depend. Like if I had a boss that was like really cool and really nice and he's like, I'm going to get down on the dirt with you, I probably would do a little bit of overtime for him. But if my boss is just like, I'm going home, you guys have to stay and work, I'd be like, I really don't care about this. There's no passion here. I don't know. It just depends for me.
That is right, guys. And as we are headed into the all digital future, you're gonna want to invest into cryptocurrency. That's what the angry guy invented. He brought in the Crypto Academy, where he will teach you how to buy and sell cryptocurrency, how to day trade crypto, make a profit off of crypto, right? And he's also going to teach you how to choose the right cryptocurrency, because there's like a top 10, top 20 cryptos that are going to increase in value over the next few years. So he's going to teach you which one to invest in. Go ahead and check that out. And yeah, just click the link in the description to check out the Crypto Academy.
Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now.
Now on with the show. Okay, so some say Nintendo is a good company to work for because there are rarely any layoffs. Let me tell you that Japanese people are good at hiding their shame and flaws. Okay, they're good at hiding those things. Under all the politeness, all the kindness that you receive from the Japanese polite culture and respect culture and harmonious culture, there's a lot of anger and rage. Okay, and I'm not saying this to be mean. I hope nobody gets insulted, but hear me out. Hear me out. Probably some mistreatment is happening at Nintendo, and we will probably never find out about it. And the same way Nintendo is protective over their intellectual properties, well, the same way they hide all the bullshit that happens on the job. So if Nintendo is overworking some of their employees, if Nintendo is, I don't know, maybe suing one of their employees, or if there's a lawsuit against Nintendo, trust me when I say you're probably not going to know about it. I know a couple of years ago, I think it was last year, that we found out about Nintendo of America, how they were treating some people, and in Nintendo of America, you work as a contractor. I guess depending on the position, but you work as a contractor, right? You work by contract. And the reason why they do that, they have you working as a contractor, is because they don't have to pay other benefits like in health insurance and all that stuff, right? So this is a way that Nintendo, finds its way around things. But in Japan, they actually do the same thing. In Japan, it's the same thing, and they do this to avoid having to pay people more money. You are a contractor. That's what you are. I've heard I've heard a lot of things about Nintendo. How they're a horrible company to work with. They're difficult, very stubborn company to work with. You know, and we're probably not gonna hear about it because they're just one of those companies that they'll pay journalists, they'll pay the news station to shut up. I mean, look at what happened. Look at what happened over there in Italy. A YouTuber got all his they got the SWAT team on his ass. They took all the retro consoles that he had. Okay? And those retro consoles, I'm sure you've seen them, they have a whole bunch of Nintendo games in them. And the reason why that happens is because most likely Nintendo will hire the mafia on your ass if they see that if they're doing something that they don't like you see Mario or Luigi in a way that they don't like. If you make a YouTube channel, if you make a video on YouTube about Mario and Luigi in a way that they didn't like it, and if they thought that there was some copyright issues, that they will come after your ass. Okay, they will contact the American police force and they will show up at your door. That's Nintendo. That's Nintendo. Anyways, let's keep on going with side scrollers. Let's let them finish up.
Greg, you're out. Labs Phoenix, what do you think?
I would say real fast that I think it all depends on the way leadership fosters their company, right? So if you build an environment where you do respect your employees, that crunch isn't just like, yeah, we always add crunch to everything we do, that it just becomes commonplace. Then you're going to find that your team, if you've fostered a really good community and a really good team, you're going to find that they want to help out, that they're like, okay, look, hey, because of X circumstance, we need to push a little harder. I think you'll find that 80% of that crew is probably going to get in the mud with you and really help. And especially if they're seeing their leader kind of doing the same or operates in that kind of same manner, they're going to be behind you. So it all depends on the culture of that company that you create. And it sounds like Nintendo in a lot of ways has done it right, where other companies have totally done it wrong. And that's where you see a lot of the horror stories.
So this goes to a larger conversation here, which as I was reading that, I thought to myself, is Shigeru Miyamoto married? Does Shigeru Miyamoto have a kid? I don't know the answers to these things. I don't know much about him privately, right? But that led me to a larger question of like, if he was to do it all over again, right? Some people are wired differently. We've seen this all the time on social media. You see these, we talk about that Bitcoin millionaire who's like, I'm 43 years old. I got no kids. I got, whatever. I'm rich, whatever. I'm going to, and he looks like a total tool bag, right? And he's like downplaying the idea of having kids and things like that. And as a father, I would trade all the money in the world to make sure my kids are, to make sure my kids are in my life, right?
Absolutely.
So, there's different perspectives on a lot of things. And I think for a lot of parents, their life truly begins when they had kids, when they had their first child. You have two different lives, one that serves you and then one that serves your kids. And, but ultimately, depending on your belief, you could say you serve God or whatever. But with that said, one that's about you and one that's about your kids. And then once your kids leaves, I think it kind of turns back to you. But do you think that, like if you had the opportunity to make a character like Mario, right? And the caveat was you're going to be world renowned. Everybody in the world's going to know your character, right? They'll, for the most part, associate you with that character. You're going to be the godfather of video games, right? But all it's going to take for you to do that is, endless hours of crunch, endless requirements, no wife, no kids, you know, and you'll make a lot of money, but you really won't have an opportunity to spend it because you're going to be working so much. Like, does that sound like a good trade to you guys? Or like, what would you rather have? The notoriety of creating something like Mario, or the family aspect of living a quote unquote normal life?
I think you definitely. Oh, I'm sorry, Mama. You take over.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I used to work a job last year that literally ran me ragged, where I worked in a warehouse for 6, almost 7 days a week, and we worked 12-hour days. And it's just like, yeah, I was making twice what I made at my previous job, but I had no life. I was like extremely emotionally drained, and I don't know. If I was put in the shoes of Miyamoto, and I knew what the future was, I'd be like, okay, I want to plan an exit strategy so I'm not working, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks every single week to make all that money. Because I do think that, like, being able to support yourself and being able to support other people is important. And that's kind of like the mindset I've had for like my early 20s. However, as I'm kind of getting to my mid 20s, I'm understanding it's just like money is good, but if you don't have people to spend it with, you don't have like individuals that you can share it with, it's just not worth it, in my personal opinion. So like, I'm in the mindset of, I'd like to make enough money so that I can enjoy my life and enjoy the life with others that I want to be with. Outside of that, I really don't care. You know what I mean?
No, that's honestly, you're learning that at a young age, and that's really good for you to know that, right? Like, you can have all these material possessions, but at the end of the day, if you don't have anyone to share it with or pass it on to, what's the point, right?
Exactly.
A lot of you guys have a lot of good thoughts on this, so let's go ahead and fire away some of y'all's thoughts. Dave says,
he is married, by the way, 2 kids.
I used to think that it would be cool to work for a video game company like Nintendo, but people forget that it's still a job. There's a lot of dream jobs. Like, for example, animation. I used to dream about being an animator, but it's a job. And like every other job, you're going to get sick and tired of it. They're probably going to overwork your ass. And then eventually drawing is not going to become this, this form of art that you enjoy doing. Eventually you get tired of it. When you corporatize a hobby, like making video games or drawing, creating art, you get sick and tired of it. And again, I remember when I was in high school, I used to dream about going to California to work for Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. But California is a dump. California is a satanic dump. And Nintendo is no different. The more you get to know Nintendo, and I think 2025 is the year that we really got to know Nintendo. We really, really got to know Nintendo. Okay, we're seeing what they're doing in action and how horrible of a company they are. And if you have a Nintendo Switch, you should do this to it.
What are you doing? I'm so glad I get to be the first person to do this. Oh no, my God. There you get. Oh my God. There you get. What was it, man?
All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to comment below. Tell me what you think. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell for future notifications. It's your boy, Andy Matrix. Godspeed, baby.